bit about her life. Obviously, it's in your face when you realize that she was nostalgic exactly 30 days before Yud Shvat. Yud Shvat is the day that the previous Rebbe passed, and 30 days before, exactly 30 days, Asar Rebbe Tevis is when it happened to Rebbetzin in the Chamadina. She herself, besides being the Rebbetzin of the previous Rebbe, was also a great granddaughter of the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe of Chabad. That's one thing. Another thing is that we know that we always talk about this regarding the subject of Mashiach, that the Persian Gulf War, the Rebbe pointed to that this was a major turning point in the historic events based on a medrash that says before Mashiach will come, there's going to be a war in that geographic location. And when that happens, people will be frightened, they'll be panicking, but the Hashem will send a message to say, do not be afraid. This is all a sign that your redemption has come. That war was about the United States and Iraq. Iraq is actually Babel. But there's another point, which is a very important point, is that the person who was, the Rebbe had the schus, that the Rebbe referred to him as the Haman of our generation, was Saddam Hussein. The Rebbe hardly ever mentions names by Farbrengen, hardly ever, for the positive or even for the negative. And this is one name that I was very surprised when the Rebbe mentioned his name, but actually referred to him as the Haman of our generation. He was obsessed with the fact that he is a reincarnation of the Nebuchadnezzar, who destroyed the first Bais Hamikdosh, because he was the king of Babylon, and he's the king of Babylon. He's the king of Iraq. He was obsessed with that, and if you read about this, you can go online, you'll see all about it. He named battalions in his army, Nebuchadnezzar. He used names and other symbols that go back. This was his goal, to destroy Rahman al-Islah and Yerushalayim. This was his dream. And of course, this was his threat at the time that this crisis came up, that if America attacks him, he will attack Israel, even though Israel had nothing to do with this whole story. So it's interesting to point out that eventually we know he was defeated. He was defeated, but he himself went into hiding. Nobody could find him. Eventually they did find him, and the day they found him was Yutes Kislev. And then his trial began on Yud Beis Tammuz. And his verdict came out on Hey Teves. And the day that he was eliminated was actually Tes Teves, the day before Asar B'Teves, which means that the Babylonian exile with the king of Babylon began on the 10th of Teves, and 2,500 years later, it ended on the same date with the person who was leading, because the Rebbe did say that he's the head of that klipa, and by eliminating him, the whole klipa is eliminated. And then there's also a pasuk in Tanakh, which the Rebbe quoted, that we're going to see in the future the downfall of Babylon, and then following that, we'll see the rise of Yerushalayim with its redemption. So there's very clear that the downfall of Babylon is something which precedes the coming of Mashiach, which is what we had the merit to witness. That's number two. A third point that I wanted to mention was that after the victory of the Sfarim on Hey Teves, the Rebbe, which was not the usual, came down to speak to the Chassidim every single day. Some days it was twice a day, after Mincha and after Ma'ariv. And also in Crown Heights around the world, Chassidim celebrated for 7 days. They refer to it as Sheva Brachas. But it ended with Asar B'Teves. It's a fast day, not allowed to eat, not allowed to drink. And on that day, the Rebbe sort of announced that we're now 30 days before Yud Shvat. Yud Shvat is the day of Istalkus, the passing of the previous Rebbe. It's also the day that the Rebbe took on leadership. So the Rebbe requested that during these 30 days, everybody should immerse themselves and add in Torah, in Tefillah, and in Tzedakah, in acts of kindness. And he said that he wants to get a report from every single chassid. They should report to their mashpia what they've added. And all the mashpiyim should report back to the Rebbe what in writing what everybody added. And it should be done 3 times during the 30 days. It appeared as if the Rebbe wanted, amongst many things which we don't understand, to reinforce and to firmly establish the idea of a mashpia. And therefore he wanted it 3 times, because when something is done 3 times, then it's solid. So this was from now until Yud Shvat. So it means it's a time where I guess we should all reflect on the idea of Aseh L'Charav, having our mashpia. And now we'll get to the sheets and the class that I'm going to give. And that is that, as we know, there are 4 days that we fast, and they're all related to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdosh. Tisha B'Av is the day that Beis Hamikdash was actually destroyed. The 17th of Tammuz was 3 weeks earlier when they burnt down the walls of the city of Yerushalayim, and then it took them 3 weeks until they got to the Beis Hamikdash to burn it down. Then there's another fast day called Tzom Gedalia, the day after Rosh Hashanah, because even after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, nevertheless, the king of Babylon allowed someone to be there. His name was Gedalia, and he was sort of we can call him like a governor who ruled Yerushalayim. So the Jewish people still had some sense of government. And then he was assassinated by other Jews because they felt politically he was in the wrong place. So that's the 3rd fast day. And the 4th fast day is today, Asar B'Tevis. The 10th of Tevis, that's when it all began. That's when the king Nebuchadnezzar held Yerushalayim under siege, which means he surrounded the city, and they wouldn't allow people to come in, to go out, and not allow food to get in or other things. And it was the beginning of the attack. It took 3 years till they actually entered the city and destroyed the city. So the Rebbe's approach to these days are, first of all, there's halacha. You have to fast. We have to mourn the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. But there's another part to it. Number 1, we mourn the destruction. And number 2, it's a time to strengthen our emunah and our belief that Hashem will send Mashiach and will have the 3rd Beis Hamikdash to replace those that were destroyed. So the Rebbe introduced a way of doing that based on the Medrash, that it says in the Medrash that Hashem told the Navi Yecheskel that if the Jewish people will learn and study how the Beis Hamikdash was built, I will consider it as if they're actually building, which doesn't mean it's just we're pretending that we're building. It means that in a spiritual sense, learning about the structure of the Beis Hamikdash hastens the actual building of the Beis Hamikdash. So what we're going to do now is I gave you 2 sheets. One is a diagram of the Beis Hamikdash, and one is a sheet that has 63 details of what was in the Beis Hamikdash. And I'm just going to go over and explain it so we have a general overview of the Beis Hamikdash. On the table, you have a little miniature model of the Beis Hamikdash. You can pass it around. Maybe it'll help you understand what we are doing. Maybe I should have it here so I can point out to things while I'm teaching. Thank you. Okay. So let's start. Number 1. You look on the sheet where it says number 1. And the picture, you don't see much, but it's actually, there were 12 steps. Everything was very precise. 12 steps to get up to the first entrance of the Beis Hamikdash. Now let's remember the Beis Hamikdash was built on a mountain. So therefore, every compartment will have again steps, 12 steps, 15 steps, again 12 steps, because they were constantly going up higher and higher on the mountain. So the first thing here are the 12 steps leading to it. Number 2 means this area where we're going into, this is a gate, and this is going into the what's called Ezras Nashim. That's what this place is called, the women's courtyard. So here on this, this is the gate, and this whole area, this first box, is the women's courtyard. And why is it called the women's courtyard? Because this is a place which we'll soon learn a little bit later, that on top over here was a place for the women to be during the dancing of Simchas Beis HaSheva. During the year, the women walked here together with the men. There was no mechitza in this area. But during the dancing, when people were dancing, that's when the women went to a separate place and the men to a separate place. Number 3 on the list. 3 is a wall. This is called the wall of the women's courtyard. So this is this wall over here. There's a wall that surrounds it from all 4 sides. Then, if you look, I hope you can see from so far, but over here there are 4, this is one big box, and here there are 4 boxes in each corner, which are rooms. The rooms had no roofs, but each room was there for, it served a certain purpose. So here's going to go over the rooms. Number 4 is the room on your right as soon as you walk in, and that was called the chamber to store wood. In the Bais Hamikdosh, they had wood for the Mizbeach. They needed firewood. That's where they stored the wood. Number 5 is on the left side as you walk in. That's called Lishchas HaNazirim. Lishchas HaNazirim means that one of the mitzvahs in the Torah is that if a person says, I accept upon myself to be a Nazir, then he has a certain status for 30 days. Not allowed to drink wine, not allowed to cut his hair, not allowed to come in contact with a dead body to become impure. And he has to live like that for 30 days. And once it's over, then he has to cut his hair and bring a special sacrifice. So that process of his hair cutting took place in this room, which was called the chamber for the Nazarites. Number 6, it's in the same area. You'll see a 6.
In the middle?
Yep. Do you see a 6?
Yeah.
So this whole area, that whole, in other words, this is the whole area is called, but no, it's supposed to be the balcony. Something's a mistake. It's supposed to be the balcony. So this is the balcony. You can see it over here. It's on top of the wall. And this is where the women stood during the dancing, and they watched the dancing on Simchas Beis HaSheva. How did they get there?
There is stairs on the side.
So number 7 shows you a staircase. Yeah, there was a staircase. How high was it? I think these things were about 40 feet high. 40 feet is about as a little bit bigger than these buildings here on Eastern Parkway, than this building here. This building, which we'll soon learn about, you see this building? This was like a 17-story building. That's not Sipurim. Right, that's how high it was. So this was about 40 amas, and this was so much higher. Then we have number 8, Hasanhedria Ketana. We know that in every Jewish city, there had to be a bezdin, a court of rabbis. The court of rabbis in every city were 3 rabbis. So there was a question in halacha, they would go to the 3 rabbis. If there was a dispute between 2 people, they would go to the 3 rabbis, and they would give the ruling. But there are certain things which are much more serious consequences, and for that you needed a bigger bezdin. In the Beis Hamikdosh, there were 2 groups. One was called the small Sanhedrin, and one was called the big Sanhedrin. So number 8 is showing you a little box over here. In this model, they didn't put it in, but here there was the small Sanhedrin. Where was the big Sanhedrin with the 71 rabbis? They were the greatest sages of the whole country, the highest authority. That's number 16. If you look at number 16, you see a half a circle. Look to your right of the picture. You'll see number 16. That's where the big Sanhedrin was. So there were differences what they went to this one for, but the ultimate highest authority was the big one, which is number 16. Now we go to number 9. So what you saw before that looked like number 6 was actually supposed to be number 9. This area is called Ezras Nashim. Then you had Lishchas HaMetzoraim. This is 10 and 11. These are the other 2 rooms over here. These 2 rooms, 10 and 11. One of them is where they used, number 11 is where the oil chamber. That's where they stored oil, or people that needed to buy oil for a sacrifice, they bought the oil there. And the other one is Lishchas HaMetzoraim. If a person was a Metzorah, he had leprosy, he also had to bring a sacrifice, he had to cut his hair, and it was a whole process of what had to be done to him before he could become pure. That was done in that room. Number 12 is the 15 steps. So now, in order to go from here to here, you had to walk up steps. And there were 15 steps. These 15 steps were in the shape of a half a circle. That's the picture they show you. They say 12. That's number 12, but the amount of steps was 15 steps. And these 15 steps, that's one of the places where the Levim used to stand when they sang and also they sang there by the dancing of Simcha Beis HaSheva. Number 13, you can't see it. It's right after number 12, but it's a little bit darkened. There were gates there. And these gates were called Nicanor gates. These were very famous gates. Why were they famous? Where were these gates? These were the gates going from this area to the next area. Because there was someone who wanted to donate, I think he wasn't even Jewish. He donated gates for the Bais Hamikdosh. But he wanted to get the best material. It was a special material of copper. He brought it, I think, from Italy to Yerushalayim. And he brought it on a boat. And as they were traveling, there was a storm. And the people said these gates were 40 amas high, 40 feet high, and they were extremely heavy. And in a storm, you take everything heavy off the boat. That's the way you can save lives. So he had no choice. They threw it into the water. And then the storm didn't stop. So they said they have to throw the second one into the water. And he wouldn't let them. He said, if you're throwing that into the water, then you'll throw me together with it. At the end, the storm calmed down. And they came to the shores of Eretz Yisrael. And when they turned around, the second gate that they threw into the water was right behind the boat. It was following them the whole time, which is a miracle. So they put it there, and it's called Shan Nikan. That's the name of the person that donated it. Number 14. Where is number 14? On the side of the steps. Yeah, you can't see it too good here, but there's 2 little holes there, 2 little doors. And these were used the 2 doors were used for 2 different things. One of them, number 14, was Lishchas Akineris. We know that the Levium used to do 2 things. Some Levium sang vocally and some played instruments. So they needed a room to store all the instruments. That's what it sounded like, yeah. So they stored the instruments in that room, Lishchas HaKineris. Number 15. So now we're going into the next chamber. We're going up the 15 steps. Now we're in this part. We're going into this part. This part, you can't see it on here, but you see it over here. Number 15 is over here. Let me do it like this. Number 15 is here at the end. There was a long line from here to here, and that was a platform. On this platform, the Kohanim would stand and give a bracha to all the Jews every day. The platform was called Duchen. So if you ever wondered why when the Kohanim go to give a bracha, they say they're going to Duchen, because in the Beis Hamikdash, Duchen means a platform. They would stand on this platform. Number 17. Lishchas Parhedrin. That's number 17. Lishcha, by the way, means a chamber, a room. So number 17 is one of the first rooms on your right. And this was a room where this was like the Kohen Gadol. There was a time where the high priest had to live in the Beis Hamikdash 7 days before Yom Kippur. And that's where he was, in that room. Lishchas HaGoyla, number 18. That was also a room where they performed certain functions for the Beis Hamikdash. Some say there was water there, and were there they would use the water to clean, to wash the Beis Hamikdash. Then the next compartment of the Beis Hamikdash is called Ezras Yisro. So the first part is the women's chamber. The second part is a chamber that all Jews can go there. You don't have to be a Kohen. You don't have to be a Levi. Number 20. When you go inside, there's also 2 rooms on the sides of the entrance. One room is called the Chamber of Pinchas, the garment maker. So whenever you see a picture of the Beis Hamikdash and Kohanim, they're wearing white. The Kohanim was supposed to wear very specific garments. An ordinary Kohen wore 4 special garments, and the Kohen Gadol wore 8 garments. So there was a room where they had all the garments in these rooms, and that's where the Kohanim went to get their garments every day when they did the avodah, they did the services. 21. Lishches HaChavitin. This was a chamber where they would make a chavita. What would that be in English? Right, it was like a frying pan, and the Kohen Gadol every day would fry something there that was part of his personal services, and also a Kohen. If it was the first day that he started, he would do it over there. 22 is another room. Maybe because we're having issues with the time, let me go a little bit more to the major parts of the Beis Hamikdash. If we have time, we'll do the other parts also. So the major part is number 29. 29 is right in the middle. That's the Mizbeach. It's interesting that this was the Mizbeach measurement was 32 by 32, which spells the word Leiv. And the Mizbeach was like the heart of the Beis Hamikdash. That's where the fire was burning, and that's where they brought the sacrifices. Then another major part is number 50, number 40. 40 is, this structure here is called, right here is called Ulam. This was a sort of a wall, a hallway before the Holy of Holies. In other words, there were 3 compartments here. The Holy of Holies, that's number 56. And over there we had the Aron and the Luchos. Then the second compartment is number 55. And that's where they had 3 items: the menorah, the table, and a smaller altar for the Ketores, for the incense. The Kohen would go in there every single day to light the menorah and to do the incense. And prior to that was this structure here, which is called Ulam. And there was no door here. I don't know if you ever heard the expression. The Gemara says, and the pasuk, Pischuli, Hashem says, open your heart for me. So the Gemara says, Hashem is saying to us, all I'm asking you is to open a Pesach kepischu shel machat, a little hole like the hole on top of a needlehead. And if you do that, I'll open the doors wide like the door of the Ulam. It was the widest door and the highest door, and there was no door, by the way, just an opening. So therefore, that represents the biggest opening in the Beis Hamikdash. Another thing which is important was, maybe you can see it from here, looks like a little barrel, but over here, on the side, there was a special device that the Kohanim would have to wash their hands and feet, pour it on their hands and feet before they went to do the Avodah. And it was from this custom comes that we too, before we daven, we wash our hands. Before you go into a shul, you wash your hands. So this is called the kiyur. Number 53, if you look at it, it's blank. So that is that in the Bais Hamikdosh, we didn't have this in the Mishkan. In the Bais Hamikdosh, they built a lot of rooms around this area of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Kodesh and Kodesh HaKadoshim. There were a lot of rooms, and these rooms, they were empty. It was just rooms, in a sense like preceding, before you can go into the holy place, the Holy of Holies, these rooms all around it. And there was nothing there, just empty rooms. And there were doors to go from one room to the next room, and steps to go from downstairs to upstairs. Now on the side, in the big box, we see what is black, has numbers. There's 60, 57, 46, 61. These were all gates. Everything in the Beis Hamikdash was very precise. So when you brought something in, you had to bring it through a gate. And everything had a precise gate which to bring it into. So let's take a look. For example, let's start with number 57. '57 is you're looking at the sheet, it's on your right, closer to the top. When they brought a carbon, the animal was brought through that gate. Then there's 58 on the other side, on the left side. It says Shara Bechoros, the gate of the firstborn, which means if you brought as a sacrifice the firstborn, then you had to go through that gate. Then there was the gate of the firewood, 61, which means when you brought firewood to the Beis Hamikdash, you had to bring it through that gate. And the same with each gate had its purpose, what it's for. Another thing interesting to point out would be the place that's called Bais Aftinus, that's number 47. It was a special chamber, and in that chamber they would prepare the incense. Bais Aftinus, it's actually a name of a person. They say that this person was the one who knew how to do the incense very good, and therefore they named it after him. And a few opinions why they gave it that name, but that's what they did the Ketores. They prepared the incense. Another thing which is interesting is if you look at 59 and 60. 59 and 60 is all the way on top to your right. What was that? You can see it over here. Here it is. This is called Beis HaNitzutz and Shara Nitzutz. No, everything is Nitzutz Elokim probably, but it was a tower where one of the laws concerning the Beis Hamikdash was that there had to be Kohanim and Leviim on guard throughout the night and throughout the day. Not on guard to protect it, but on guard in a way to give it honor. Sometimes you have a guard because you're afraid something will be stolen, you have to protect it. There's other times where, let's say, a king walks with people around him because then you realize that this is someone who is separate, who is different, and this gives honor to the king. You know, when a chassan and kala get married, the days before they have to have someone walking with them, and the days after the wedding, for the shavuot, they have to have somebody walking with them outside. But the difference is the days before the wedding, it's protection. The days after the wedding, being that a chassan and kala are like a king and a queen, it's to give them the proper honor. So this was a place on top. There would be Levium standing on guard, and on the bottom there was also Kohanim standing on guard. Number 46. Number 46 is there was one particular building, this one, that looked a little bit different than the others. On top, had like a dome on top. And this was called, by the way, this is one done by the students. They had a project and they put together, and you can't see it, but on each thing it has written what it is. Once upon a time. They have the English name for it. It's called Bais Hamikdosh. In here, there was a fire burning. Remember, the Kohanim would walk around barefooted because the halacha was that their feet had to touch the floor of the Bais Hamikdosh. In fact, if they were wearing something, it would disqualify what they did because their feet had to touch the floors of the Bais Hamikdosh. And Yerushalayim is not always so warm. Sometimes it's colder. So there was a chamber there where it's a chamber where some of them would sleep there sometimes. It's also a chamber where there was a fire burning, and they can go there to warm up if they needed to warm up because of the cold. And I should say that every day, by the way, they did, before they started the services for the day, they had a team of Kohanim which would do a search, go through the whole Bais Hamikdosh, make sure that everything is there, everything is in place, everything is ready. And they met at the entrance, and then one group went to the right, one group went to the left, and they went through the whole Bais Hamikdosh until they met again, and they told each other everything's okay, and that's how they knew that the Bais Hamikdosh was being ready to be built. So there's more things here, and actually, one of the projects which I mentioned in the beginning of the year was to learn about the Bais Hamikdosh. And I have these same sheets without numbers, which means once you learn it properly, you really want to know if you know what everything is. Then you put the numbers in to point out where's what. So anybody who wants to do that for fun or because they want to learn about the Bais Hamikdosh, you're welcome, and I'll give you the sheets on that. Anyway, whoever's fasting, I want to wish you to have an easy fast. But the biggest bracha is that this day should no longer be a fast day. It should be transformed into becoming a yontif. And it'll be one of the biggest Yom Tovim that we'll celebrate. It'll be called the Yontif Asar B'Tevis. It should be this year. So if Mashiach comes now, do we stop fasting or we continue fasting? We'll soon find out. Okay. Anyway, I'll leave this on the table if anybody wants to have a closer look today, tomorrow. Around.